Good morning. Nikki here, the Obsessive Bookseller. Welcome to my monthly wrap-up for September 2022. As you can see, the setup is a little different. My phone inexplicably and randomly died, so I am filming on my iPad today because I still haven't gotten a replacement. All of the footage that I had is completely gone. But anyway, we're trying something new because this video is supposed to go up today and things just didn't line up time-wise, so we're going to try to film this all in one take and see how it goes. So I read a ton of books this month. My goal was to kind of work towards completing series, but I also had just a couple of short series that I wanted to get through, like novella length. And so to that end, I read the first 3 books in the 7 Song series by Anthony Ryan. I have books 2 and 3 here, Kraken's Tooth and City of Songs. And these are really cool. The first one's called Pilgrimage of Swords. It's hard to pack a lot of substance in such a short, page count, but somehow he managed. There are elements of that first book that felt kind of like the same atmosphere you get reading a Malazan book, in a much more digestible chunk. But yes, the next 2 were really fun as well. My only criticism would be, because the page count is so short, things seem a little easier to accomplish than they would have otherwise. Because, you've got to move the plot along a little bit quicker in this kind of format. So, yeah, but other than that, these are a ton of fun, especially if you're as big of a fan of Anthony Ryan as I am. I think it's a good pick. Next up, I finished the Beldam Apocrypha series by Cameron Hurley. Finally. I've been reading this one for ages. And, yeah, this last book, I was kind of hoping for the overall external conflicts to go somewhere meaningful. They didn't. I was kind of hoping for meaningful character progression. That happened a little bit. And I was thinking that it was going to give me a satisfying ending that made the entire journey worth it. Not really. This did not feel like a final book in a series. In fact, it was more like just another day in the life in the adventures of, and it was entertaining, but not one that I found particularly memorable. Now, that being said, I have some really trusted friends on Goodreads who absolutely rave about this series. Evidently they didn't care whether or not it ended somewhere meaningful. They just were excited to spend more time in this world with these characters. And I can see why. This is completely wild, really gritty, some of the most shock value content that I've come across. And just overall super bizarre, but a lot of fun. So, if you want something off the beaten path, this is the sci-fi for you. She challenges the status quo of societal norms and is not afraid to talk about taboo topics and include them in her writing. And so, from that standpoint, I really appreciate her works. From a series standpoint and capping it off, I wish there had been more. For Patreon Book Club, we read Transformation by Carol Berg. First book in the Al Raya series, something to that effect. Now, I had heard a lot of feedback that this, the writing style of this is similar to Robin Hobb, and I can kind of see the comparison there, especially from a plot standpoint, but for me, Robin Hobb's beauty is in the richness of her characters. They are so deep and immersive that it doesn't really matter if there's a plot because you're just so in with the characters. In this case, they were okay, but I found the characters a little too inconsistent for my tastes. They were so wildly extreme at any given scene that it felt like they were kind of caricatures and not real people. And the plot was okay. There was some elements that really weren't my favorite, so I don't know. I started out really excited about this book and liked about the first 25%, and then from there, yeah, didn't appreciate it as much as I thought I would. It was still a solid read. I just went in with super high expectations, so we're coming in at a 3 out of 5 star, which isn't too bad. I think I will continue the series, but it's not as super high priority. I was sent a review copy of Into the Windwracked Wilds by Deborah Baker. It's a pen name for Shannon McGuire. It's a middle grade series, and because I was going to give this one a try, I started the first book in the series. This is book 3, and it's called Into the Woodward Wild, something like that. Over the Woodward Wall. And I like middle grade books. and I consume them in small doses, but I just read the Bartimaeus series, and it's now one of my all-time favorites. I really loved it. With this one, even though she has this really beautiful, very fairy tale-like storytelling quality to her writing, totally perfect for a type of story like this, I found the plot itself in that first book just a little bit too simple for my tastes. And so I made it about halfway and decided that the series probably wasn't going to be for me at this juncture. I'll probably hang on to this because I can imagine my kids really liking it in a few years, but yeah, for the moment, not quite my thing. Very lovely. It was a very lovely story. I just, yeah, was more interested in getting to other things, I think, at the time. So I have this for the future, but yeah, DNF the series for now. Yet another middle grade, The Dragon's Lair by Elizabeth Hayden. It's book 3 in the Lost Journals of Ven Polytheme series. It's a middle grade spin-off of her adult Symphony of Ages series, which I love. And the whole premise of this is the author is pretending to be an archaeologist in this world who is discovering these journals, like remnants of these journals and sketches from this like famous explorer of this world's past. And she's trying to take what she found and piece together and fill in the gaps to give you a cool adventure story. The problem with this one is that it really wasn't much about the adventure. It was like the first half of the book they were gearing up for the adventure, and then when they finally left, I was like, oh, okay, now the story's getting started. But we didn't have a lot of pages left to really have fun exploring these worlds, spend any like amount of meaningful time in any of the cool places that we saw. So yeah, I think from an organization standpoint, I think it was a little heavy at the beginning on non-adventure content. And actually, this is the first book of the 3, which all have dragons on the cover, that actually had a dragon in the book, so that's in its favor. But still, yeah, this one isn't quite delivering on everything I want it to, even though it's still a fun series. I have one more to go, and it's a water adventure, so hopefully that one will be even more exotic and fun. So I'm willing to finish out the series. For Reed Burn Horde, I picked out Summer Dragon, and I have a whole vlog of that in that feature, and so I won't go into too much depth here, but okay, so I wasn't sure at first, did not care for the audio, switched to the print version, found it much better, and I'd say the first part, after you get into it a bit, really solid story, enjoyed it immensely. The second half of the book was such a struggle to finish that I ended up kind of speed reading a little bit. I really didn't feel connected to the characters. I didn't like where the plot was going. I thought a few things felt contrived. In its favor, it did focus pretty heavily on the dragons, which for a dragon story, that's what you want. And additionally, the author is an illustrator by profession, and so he did all of the illustrations for his book. And I gotta say, that kind of made the experience a lot more fun. So yeah, I don't know, mixed feelings on this. I'm definitely not continuing the series. I didn't feel connected to it enough to want to know what happens next. But at the same time, it's such a beautiful copy. Even like the naked hardcover is this pretty blue cover, so I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or not. But anyway, I've been hanging on to this one for so long and worried that I wasn't going to like it, and that's what happened, but at least I gave it a try. And then right now, I am like a few chapters away from finishing Sorcery of a Queen by Brian Naslund. This is book 2 in the Dragons of Terra series. And the first book, I wasn't sure at first. And then it won me over. Like, I was starting out at a 2-star. I ended up at a solid 4-star. He's got this addictive quality to his writing, and I find that before I know it, I'm like a third of the way through the book and don't know how I got there because it's just, yeah, so easy to consume. Very good writing here. I found all those same qualities in this second book. I'm just not quite sure I'm on board with the plot. It kind of took a weird direction. That was one of the things I really liked about the first book, is that I had no idea where it was going. He would surprise me with not sticking to normal, expected plot trajectories. And same thing in here, but in here I'm like now criticizing it because I'm like, I don't know, that's a little too weird now. I'm not sure I'm on board, but I'm interested enough to see how everything wraps up in this world. I will say the thing that caught my interest the most in this one was the politics. And like as soon as we kind of got going with that, it stopped. Like we took a different path. So yeah, I'm hoping for more politics in the next one. I really wanted to know more about the dragon magic, and we got a little bit of that, but still not to my satisfaction. So I got a lot of hopes riding on the final book. Yeah. So far, so good. Someone recommended this to me because I loved the Draconius Memoria series by Anthony Ryan, and I can totally see the similarities, even though I like that one a lot more. But yeah, still, solid read. I think I'm going to end up giving this one about a 3-star. The first one was a 4-star, so yeah, not bad. I read Home by Martha Wells. It was like 16 pages. It's the first Murderbot content that didn't take place from its perspective, so in a sense it was a really valuable little short story. I thought it was new because I had just now heard of it, but apparently it takes place after book 3 or 4. So yeah, a little late to that party. I wish I had read it in sequence with everything else, but yeah, that one was pretty good. I read Sins of Our Fathers by James S.A. Corey. It's novella 9.5 in the series, meaning it came out after the final book. And the final book was okay, but it left me wanting a little bit. I have a review for that. But in this case, I was really hoping that this would give me a lot of the answers that the final book did not, and it didn't. But that being said, it reminded me why I loved the series in the first place. It's this like very intimate connection to these characters, and it found a way to remind me what happened throughout the entire series without hitting me over the head with recap. It was more like, well, this is what happened to the character, and that's why he's in the state of mind he's at because of these events. And it was very organic, and I loved it so much. It was so interesting. So while it was a complete tangent from everything that has happened so far, it reinvigorated my passion for the series and left me leaving Expanse on a positive note, which I really appreciate. So solid 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed that one. I also read, in stark contrast, Semiosis by Sue Burke. I did it for Project Sci-Fi, and I've been hanging on to this one forever. But because I read Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky and found how much I absolutely love the more biological, anthropological science fiction, I thought, well, I definitely need to read this one next. And actually, in a very loose way, it had a lot of similarities to Sins of Our Fathers as well. But I don't know. I love the concept for this story. I love the introduction, the first couple of chapters where you really get to enmesh in this new world, and it's so alien and exotic and beautiful. And then from there, it turned into more of a multi-generational character study, and it used a couple of things that I usually don't care for in books. This like dramatic irony where you as the reader know what's going on, but the characters don't. And so then you don't feel the anticipation, you don't feel the drama, you don't feel the excitement of discovery because you already know what's going on. And so right there I felt like at an arm's distance. And then the multi-generational thing puts you even further away because as soon as you get connected to a character, we switch. And the biological aspect, it felt more like an AI on a ship than it did an actual alien biological creation, if that makes sense. And so for me, the type of story being told kind of felt like a lot of the other ones that I've read. It didn't really offer me a lot of new things. And it didn't focus a ton on the flora and fauna of the world. It was more about the development of these people, but it was, again, a little too simple for me to really latch on and care about anything going on. I didn't find it super interesting. So yeah, that one was a bust. I finished the book. I rated it really lowly, and then I went and found spoilers for the second one because I was pretty sure I wasn't going to read on, but I had a copy, so I wanted to at least see what I was missing out on. And one person said, yeah, I think the second book could have been summarized in like an epilogue at the end of the first book. And I'm like, that would have been great because I think some of the ideas she introduced were interesting, but yeah, didn't like the execution of anything enough to read on. So that one was kind of a bust. I also read Tekla, part of the Vlad Tolstoy series by Stephen Brust, and liked this one. I think this is one of the stronger ones that I've read so far. I've read it before. I went by publication order and got like at least 1 or 2 books past this point. But then some Goodreads friends and I decided to go back and start and do the chronological order. So yeah, from both readings of this series, this is still one of the stronger ones. I really like it. It's one of those weird fantasy novels that's really hard to categorize because it's got fantasy elements, but it's told in a very urban fantasy style. There's a mystery to everything. It just has so many different really fun components, and I've been comparing it to the Dresden Files. It's like the fantasy equivalent of the Dresden Files. And then someone last month in the comments let me know that Dresden Files was actually inspired by this series. And I'm like, well, that makes complete sense because you can see the cheekiness of the main character, the fun aspect of his sidekicks, like the way each episode kind of comes together. And he's a sorcerer for hire, essentially. So, I mean, you can see the dualities. So, yeah, I picked up on it without even knowing about it. So, if you like Dresden, you might enjoy this series. I think it's held up really well to the test of time. I'm enjoying it just as much now as I did upon my first read. And I know it's been in the works for a really long time. And what's more, there's even a new book coming out next year. So the author is still writing in the series, which I find really exciting. So yeah, I'm hoping to slowly work my way through the whole thing over the next several months. You know, just the good palate cleansers between other things. And that's it for science fiction fantasy stuff. I read a whole bunch this month. I had a lot of fun. I'll talk about it more in my incomplete series challenge, but I have this new system and it's really helping me get through books a lot more quickly. And it's fun. I don't feel like I'm reading any extra, but I mean the key is that I'm only reading one book at a time in each format. So I'm actually quite quick at reading when I'm not trying to bounce around between a bunch of other things. So it's been a lot of fun. But I did manage to squeeze in a couple of nonfiction. It's been a few months since I've added a few. I read Minimalist Moms, and this is less of like a how-to strategy guide as more of a inspiration, like here's how this has worked for me, perhaps you should consider trying it, kind of a thing. And I found a few good key nuggets in there, good inspiration out of it, kind of like maybe just a tad further along my journey than this book is. But what I appreciated most, I believe the author is a podcast like runner, and she is clearly really well read in the minimalist and decluttering genre. So she had a lot of references, a lot of depth of knowledge that really added to her perspective. And so like overall, I enjoyed this book. I will remember a couple of the key things that I learned from it. One of which, like, I mean, if you're a mom, your kids have stuff's going to be all over the floor. That's kind of a given. And there's going to be a point where you're going to kind of miss that stage of their life. So kind of try to embrace it, even though it comes with more mess. I swear, minimalism and decluttering, all of that, it would be so much easier without children. I remember back in my college days when I had like twice as much stuff as I have now packed into a space like half the size. And it was mostly organized because I would just pack it away neatly, like Tetris it, and then never touch it. But now, like, everything gets dragged out constantly. So anyway, yeah, really enjoyed that book. The other one I read was The Clutter Connection by Cassandra Arson. She is known online as the Clutter Bug. She has a TV show called Hot Mess House on HGTV. But I've been following her for so many years on YouTube. I love her so much. Her systems make sense to me. And once I started following her, she was kind of my gateway into the decluttering world. And she has these like 4 clutter bugs, the 4 different systems of organizing, and I'm totally a cricket. So her whole thing is if you can't get organized in your life, it might be because you're using the wrong systems for your personality type. And I think she is so charming. But anyway, this book is kind of like a explanation of her entire system. And because I've been following so long, I really didn't pick up too many things new from it. But, and I did skip chapters, so I know what type of organizer I am. So I kind of focused on those chapters. Read the beginning, read my chapter, read the thoughts at the end, and yeah, thought it was good. So highly recommend her if you feel like your life is disorganized and you need a little help getting going. Like she'll give you some like ideas on how to get more control over your space. But yeah, I've been meaning to read that one for a while. I'm sure it would have benefited me a lot better had I read it ages ago. And that's the list. Yeah, so much fun reading this month. and didn't feel like I was pushing myself to read more. Now, it definitely helps that I had a ton of short stories in there and shorter books, because that always makes you feel like you're getting a lot more bang for your buck. And whereas focusing on the next month, I have a lot more tomes, so I'll probably just have a shorter stack for next month. But in any case, yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this venture. I want to take a minute to thank my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. And yeah, hope to catch you next time. Bye.